Hey, it's your girl Dana Lorraine. Forewarning, this episode is not for anybody that's sensitive to the N-word. By the N-word, I mean nigga. This episode is not to bash my home city of Chicago or any other area that is plagued by violence. This video is to be informative and to be of love, light, and service. I'll start with a small story. My really close friend of a lot of years that still resides in my hometown of Chicago called me today, and I was battling with the topic of what I was going to speak about. When he called me, he said, "Hey, how are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm good." And we're catching up, and he had a really eventful weekend where he decided to take on a new hobby, which is snowboarding. Kudos to him. But as soon as I asked him how the weekend went, because it was his first time technically trying out his snowboard, he interrupted our conversation to let me know that one of his best friends, I wouldn't say best friend, but close friends out in Chicago, was visiting. And when he was visiting, he went to a bar, got into an altercation, and was shot to death. Now, this came out of left field. It came out of nowhere. We were talking about something completely different. So when he said it, it kind of took me back. For those of you that don't know, I do have this very empathetic energy towards things that I hear. It immediately affected me because although I wasn't close with the young man that was shot, I have heard of him in passing through other associates. So, I immediately consoled my friend and let him know how I felt so bad about his loss. And I genuinely meant that because now that I'm in my 30s, there has been instances I found myself in where the individuals that I grew up with, whether they're close to me or whether they're not, have lost their lives, unfortunately. When he told me that, it struck me because it's always shocking to hear someone so young passing away from something so unfortunate and so unnecessary as being shot in an altercation at a bar. But it did also make me think about how I wasn't going to talk about the topic that I'm about to talk to you about now. One of my favorite ancestors in the world, Neely Fuller Jr.
Because that's not going to work under the system of racism. You can't unite with anybody.
I know a lot of you may have never heard of him, but he is a remarkable individual that devoted his entire life and purpose to the enlightenment of the melanated people of the world, to try to have them understand that white supremacy, and whether you believe in that or not, or whether you've heard of it or not, is in existence, and it somewhat takes a part in all of our lives, because until it's dismantled, it will continue to bring injustice amongst the people of this planet. Now, Neely Fuller Jr.'s work, to me, is controversial for a lot of reasons. He spoke from a very eloquently logical place of, if you just put A plus B together, it'll equal C. He wrote a book called The Compensatory Code for Victims of White Supremacy. I would have brought it with me, but I was in a rush to get over here to record, so I forgot it. Neely Fuller Jr. just passed away recently at the age of 95. He had a live show that he broadcasted through a podcast, and he had a co-host called Dr. Bobby Jr. They got on the air every week, and they spoke and they took calls from individuals. People would call into his show and ask him real life advice on how to deal with the things that they were experiencing that they felt came from the product of white supremacy. Now, I found this work that he created younger. Like, I actually can't remember when I first discovered Neely Fuller Jr., but when I did discover him, it was one of those things where at first I heard it and I was like, this is a little, far-fetched. I don't know if I could listen to this entirely and feel okay. But one thing about me, when something makes me uncomfortable, I want to know if there's some truth behind it. So I continue to look into his work and I continue to listen to his message, and his overall message was very similar to a lot of freedom fighters, where if there's one injustice, there is no justice. He put it in such a logical way of explaining the root of the problem through the system of white supremacy. Now, this is not a video to bash people that classify themselves as white. This is a reflective video to connect what my friend just told me on our call to what the works of Neely Fuller Jr. embodied. In his work, he kind of let everyone know that because the system of white supremacy is reigning over everything we do in all areas of activity, and he named all the areas of activity. I think they were 8 different areas, like sex, religion, economics, agriculture. I wish I could remember the other 4. He was basically saying all of those areas have been affected by the system of white supremacy. He explains that the system of white supremacy is the individuals that classify themselves to be white and a supremacist to dominate the individuals on this planet that consider themselves to be non-white. Now, when I first heard this was so controversial because as a melanated woman, I mean, this is not foreign to me. But the way he broke it down in a logical way always made me think. He said, this is not for me to convince you. This is for me to present evidence to make you think about the circumstances that you see around you and what you decide to do. So when I spoke to my friend earlier and I tried to get the details of what happened to his friend and how he was shot and what bar he was at, I stopped and I thought to myself, one of the first things that Neely Fuller Jr. ever said that really made me take an interest in his work is that he said, do not ever meet up with somebody, don't link with somebody, don't go share your time with somebody if you don't have a constructive outcome. Now, as a young woman, when I was listening to Neely Fuller Jr., I believe I started late high school till early college. And when I was listening to that, all I was doing, ironically, was meeting up with friends, associates to do non-constructive things. So when he said that, it went in one ear and out the other because I'm like, okay, I'm still gonna live my life. The more I kept listening to his message, the more it started to resonate with, why are we getting together? Are we getting together to go drink and to go party and to go do mindless things, or are we doing things that are gonna enhance our life? And the more I used to sit on his message, the more I started to recognize that when I went out and I got drunk and I partied and I did this and that, or it was always so much drama, unnecessary drama at that. It was always unproductive. It amounted to nothing. And on top of that, the results of the night would always end up in me probably having a headache, having an argument with somebody that I didn't mean to have, getting a ticket on my car because I was parked in the wrong spot, getting my car towed because I was parking in the wrong spot, spending a bunch of money that I didn't have no business spending. Just, it was always so much chaoticness. And I returned to that weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend. Now, mind you, I'm going through college, so this is like the norm of a college girl, to go out, party real hard, wake up at 6 a.m., make it to all her classes and get good grades, right? That was just the norm of college. But the more I sat with his message and the more I kept listening, the more I started thinking to myself, like, what draws me to do this? To make these unproductive, illogical decisions at the drop of a dime to go do things that I deem as fun. I'm with the people I love sometimes, so it's fun because I'm around their energy. Or I go out and I have an adventure, but it's always laced in liquor, late nights, loud, rambunctious music, rowdy crowds. And one day I just remember thinking to myself, like, is this really fun? I feel like I lose more than I gain in most of these scenarios. And because I wasn't practicing the lifestyle that I practice now then, looking back on it, I didn't have good sense. And the people that I was doing these activities with, they didn't have good sense. Like, not meaning we weren't well, just meaning we were programmed to think this was fun. And I remember when I started to withdraw from those environments, started to drink less, how I noticed that when I wasn't in the thick of it, I noticed how I got to observe everybody else that still was. The people that were still partying, drinking, going out, they always ended up with results that made no sense. They ended up fighting, catching cases, waking up with hangovers, getting their cars towed. And I started looking like, was this me? And it started to make me feel like maybe what this guy Neely Fuller Jr. is saying is not so far-fetched. Now, I was getting this same message from my grandparents a lot of the time. But because they're my grandparents, because they're so much older, and I feel like they don't understand me and they've lived their lives and they don't know this and that. I couldn't perceive it correctly a lot of the times. But because it was coming from an entirely different source, through straight logic, through pure example, Neely Fuller used to get on his camera, and I know a lot of people didn't understand the way he spoke. By camera, I mean his podcast that he had. He used to get on air and he used to say things like, so what happens when a group of black people get together and they decide that they need to hang out? And he used to illustrate through his words, step by step, how one of my Saturday nights would go. Get up in one car, say we need something to do, grab a fifth of alcohol from 7-Eleven, which is around the corner from my dormitory in the center of downtown Chicago, go to someone's dorm room, pass it around, drink as much as possible, go to a club or bar right after, stand in a long line, or sometimes skip the line depending on what we had on, go inside, drink more alcohol, listen to all types of obscure music, dance, end up having what seemed to be such a good night, but then the chaos starts. You go outside, you don't know where your car is, it got towed. Or one of your friends is too drunk, so you gotta figure out how you're gonna get them home, but you're also drunk, and then you gotta make sure you don't get pulled over. Or then your friend and you start to have a generic argument about something that makes no sense. And Neely Fuller used to literally illustrate this through his words, and I used to think to myself, there is no lying what this man is saying. He always ended a lot of his messages with the premise of, you've been programmed to do things that do not make sense. I had to sit on that. And that really carved a lot of my development to where I am right now. My lifestyle has completely changed. Just thinking back on it, the cards that I was dealt was such a full hand. I mean, I grew up in a beautiful neighborhood. I'm talking about Huxtable, like black elite neighborhood in the south suburbs called Olympia Fields. Went to a beautiful college for social justice called Roosevelt University, got a master's, but all the while through doing things that make no sense to the end goal. And when Neely Fuller broke it down, he's like, you've been programmed through this system to not use your mind. You've been programmed to think that things that are unproductive and harmful are fun. I had to sit with that a lot of the times. So I'm making this video, and I know it's probably gonna have to be another part because there's so much to say. There's so much other stuff that Neely Fuller stands for that I feel like would benefit the world so much in this period that I want to share. But the premise of this video and that feeling that I got when my friend called me and told me he had lost his friend to nonsense, being in the wrong environment, alcohol induced, and even if the individuals weren't drunk that were shooting at each other, just the nuance of having that violence, what Neely Fuller calls that self-hatred, like, it really sent me back into a meditation, and I just wanted to share with you, there are prolific ancestors and scholars that have written on the things that we see every day in life that we are battling, that we hear around us that are going on, that we want to find solutions to. And Neely Fuller Jr. is one of those solutions. So whoever this message was intended to, whoever it finds, I hope it resonates. I'm telling you this because this man's work changed my life. So the point in this platform is to hopefully ignite something in you that will spark your best self. But until next time, I love you. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and stay on code, as Neely Fuller would say. Peace.